Adam Brooks believed he had buried his past under a mountain of sawdust and the sweet laughter of his 4-year-old daughter. He was a man of silence, a carpenter who built walls to keep the world out until a frantic pounding on his door in the middle of a torrential storm shattered his peace. He thought he was just opening his home to a woman escaping the rain. He didn't know he was protecting the most hunted woman in the city. He was a lonely single dad protecting a stranger, but by the following night, a single, desperate kiss in front of the city's elite would reveal a secret that would freeze the blood of every billionaire in the room. The coldest millionaire wasn't the man on the stage, but the man holding her hand. The rain in Silver Falls, Oregon, was a punishing, relentless force that turned the towering Douglas firs into jagged shadows against a charcoal sky. Inside his modest craftsman home, Adam Brooks sat at a heavy oak table he had built with his own hands. The only sound was the rhythmic ticking of a grandfather clock and the soft, steady breathing of his daughter, Lily, who was tucked away in her bedroom. Adam was 36, with a face etched by a quiet sorrow. His hands were rough, stained with wood glue and cedar oil, but they were the only thing that kept his world upright. He lived for the routine. Pancakes at 7, preschool drop-off at 8, and the comforting scent of the workshop until 3. He was a ghost in his own life, a man who had retired from the high-stakes world of corporate warfare to become a protector of a much smaller kingdom. At 11:45 p.m., the rhythm of the storm was broken. A series of sharp, frantic thuds echoed against the front door. It wasn't the wind. It was a sound of absolute, unadulterated terror. Adam stood, his movements fluid and precise. He didn't turn on the porch light. Instead, he peered through the sidelight window. A woman stood there, drenched. Her blonde hair was plastered to her face, and her silk dress, clearly designed for a gala, not a rainstorm, clung to her shivering frame. She was looking back at the dark street with eyes that resembled a trapped animal's. At the end of the block, a set of headlights flickered on, then off. Adam unlocked the deadbolt. He didn't open the door wide. He just cracked it enough to see her emerald green eyes. "Please," she rasped, her voice cracking. I just need to get out of the light. Just for a minute." Adam saw a black sedan creeping slowly past his house. He didn't ask questions. He reached out, grabbed her arm, and pulled her into the warmth of his hallway, locking the door and sliding the security chain in one seamless motion. The woman collapsed against the wall, sliding down to the hardwood floor. She didn't cry, she just shook. Adam didn't crowd her. He disappeared for a moment and returned with a heavy wool blanket and a dry towel. "I'm Adam," he said, his voice a low, grounding baritone. "There's a child sleeping down the hall, so we're going to keep it quiet. You're safe here for tonight." The woman looked up, the towel draped over her head. "I'm Marina," she whispered. I think I just ended my life to save my soul." Adam looked at the ruined silk of her dress. He had spent a decade in the highest echelons of international finance. He knew the look of someone fleeing a gilded cage. He thought she was a socialite in trouble. He had no idea she was a journalist who had stumbled upon a secret that could topple the city's most powerful man. In that moment, Adam was just a father helping a stranger. He didn't know that by opening his door, he had just invited the world he ran from back into his living room. And Marina, looking at the rugged, silent man who had asked for nothing in return, felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. But the headlights at the end of the block hadn't disappeared. They were waiting for the sun to rise. The first light of dawn was a pale, cold gray, filtering through the dense Oregon pines like smoke. Adam hadn't slept. He had spent the night in the darkness of the kitchen, his back to the wall, watching the street through the slats of the blinds. He hadn't touched a weapon, but the way he sat, still as stone, senses heightened, suggested he was a man who didn't need one to be dangerous. When the sun finally began to warm the floorboards, Marina stirred on the sofa. She sat up, the wool blanket sliding from her shoulders. She looked at Adam, who was already standing by the stove, the aroma of fresh coffee acting as a fragile bridge back to reality. "You're still here," she said, her voice small. It's my house, Marina, Adam replied, his voice a low rumble. Coffee? As she took the mug, her hands still trembled. I should go. If they find me here, they already know you're here, Adam interrupted calmly. The black sedan circled the block 4 times last night. They're waiting for you to step into the light. But in this house, the rules are different. Before she could ask what he meant, the rhythmic patter of feet announced Lily's arrival. The 4-year-old stopped at the kitchen entrance, her eyes widening at the sight of the princess in her living room. Is she a mermaid, Daddy? Lily asked, pointing to Marina's shimmering, ruined silk dress. She's a guest, Lilybug, Adam said, his face softening with a warmth that seemed to transform him from a soldier back into a father. Go get your coloring books. Marina is going to stay for breakfast. For a few hours, the terror of the previous night was replaced by the mundane. Marina watched Adam flip pancakes with practiced ease, saw him laugh as Lily told a long, rambling story about a squirrel. She saw a lonely single dad, a man who seemed content with the scent of cedar and the quiet life of a carpenter. But the illusion shattered at 10 a.m. A silver SUV with tinted windows pulled into the gravel driveway. It didn't hide, it parked with the arrogance of an owner. Adam didn't flinch. He walked to the window, his eyes narrowing. Get in the pantry, Marina. Take Lily, he commanded. Adam, now. The tone was absolute. Marina grabbed Lily and slipped into the reinforced walk-in pantry. Adam waited until the door clicked shut, then he stepped onto the porch. 2 men in tailored gray suits stepped out of the SUV. They were cleaners, corporate muscle disguised as legal aids. The lead man, a tall, cold-eyed figure named Marcus, held up a folder. We're looking for a woman, Mr. Brooks, Marcus said, his voice dripping with artificial politeness. She stole some sensitive data from our employer, Mr. Sterling. We followed her signal here. I don't know any Mr. Sterling, Adam said, leaning against the porch railing, looking every bit the unbothered craftsman. And the only woman in this house is my daughter. Marcus smiled, a predatory expression. We're not the police, Brooks. We don't need a warrant. We just need the girl. Give her up, and you can go back to your woodworking. Resist, and we'll find out how well this old house burns. Adam's expression didn't change, but the air around him seemed to drop 10 degrees. You're right about one thing, Marcus. You're not the police. Which means there's no one here to witness what happens if you step onto my grass. You think a carpenter scares us? Marcus laughed, reaching into his jacket. Adam didn't draw a gun. He took 2 steps forward and grabbed Marcus's wrist with a speed that shouldn't have been possible for a man of his build. There was a sickening pop as the bone shifted. Marcus gasped, his knees hitting the gravel. I'm going to give you a message for Julian Sterling, Adam whispered into Marcus's ear. Tell him the ghost of Wall Street is retired. But if he sends another suit to my house, I'll come out of retirement just to dismantle his empire brick by brick. Now, get off my land. The men scrambled back into the SUV and tore down the driveway. Adam stood there, his chest rising and falling slowly. He wasn't just a carpenter. He was the man who had once been the silent architect behind the largest mergers in the country, the man who walked away from billions because he wouldn't compromise his soul. Marina stepped out onto the porch, having seen everything through the window. Who are you, Adam? I'm a man who wants to be left alone, he said, turning back to her. But it looks like Julian Sterling won't allow that. Tomorrow is his annual gala at the Crystal Hall. He's going to announce the merger that will destroy your father's company and finalize the theft of the city's resources. I have the proof to stop him, Marina said, clutching a small flash drive she'd hidden in her bodice. But I can't get close enough. I can, Adam said. But to do it, we have to stop hiding. We're going to give him exactly what he wants, an audience. The air in the house had changed. The domestic warmth of the morning was replaced by a cold, metallic focus. Marina watched Adam as he moved through the living room, locking shutters she hadn't even noticed were there. He wasn't just a father anymore, he was a commander preparing for a siege. "You called yourself the Ghost of Wall Street," Marina said, her voice echoing in the quiet house. "I've heard that name. A myth. The man who orchestrated the 2018 tech merger and then vanished with a fortune that could buy half of Oregon. They said you died in a plane crash." "A plane did crash," Adam said, not looking up from his task. "But I wasn't on it. I needed a clean break to keep Lily safe from the people I used to call friends. People like Julian Sterling." Adam walked to his workshop, a separate building connected by a breezeway. He beckoned Marina to follow. The workshop was filled with the scent of cedar and sawdust, but Adam didn't stop at the workbench. He moved a heavy, floor-to-ceiling cabinet of hand planes, revealing a hidden keypad embedded in the stone wall behind it. He punched in a code, and with a hiss of hydraulics, a section of the floor retracted. Marina gasped. Below was not a cellar, but a high-tech vault. When they descended the stairs, the lights hummed to life, revealing a space that looked like it belonged in a skyscraper, not a farmhouse. There were rows of monitors, encrypted servers, and most jarringly, 3 glass cases. One held a charcoal gray suit that looked woven from liquid silk, the others held watches and cufflinks that cost more than most homes. "This is what's left of that life," Adam said, his voice devoid of pride. "I kept it in case Julian ever came looking. I knew he wouldn't stop until he owned everything. He doesn't just want your father's company, Marina. He wants the soul of this city." Adam sat at the console, his fingers flying across the keys. The carpenter was gone. In his place was the most brilliant financial mind of a generation. On the screens, Julian Sterling's empire began to unravel in digital code, hidden offshore accounts, coerced signatures, and the very fraud Marina had risked her life to expose. "The gala is tomorrow night," Adam said, his face illuminated by the blue light of the screens. "Julian thinks he's untouchable because he's the coldest millionaire in the room. He thinks no one has the capital or the courage to challenge him." Adam turned to look at her. "He's wrong. We're going to walk into that room. You're going to be the distraction. I'm going to be the ghost. But to get you through those doors, you need to look like you belong at the right hand of a man even Sterling is afraid of." He opened a hidden drawer and pulled out a velvet box. Inside was a necklace of emeralds that seemed to glow with their own internal fire. "My wife's," Adam whispered, his voice cracking for the first time. "She never got to wear it to the gala we were supposed to attend. Tomorrow, you wear it. Tomorrow, we finish this." The rest of the day was spent in a feverish preparation. Adam taught Marina how to move, how to speak, and how to navigate the shark-infested waters of the elite. But as the night fell, a new tension arose. As they sat on the porch, watching the stars, Marina realized she wasn't just doing this for the story or her father anymore. She was doing it for the man who had given up a kingdom to build a birdhouse for his daughter. "Why are you doing this, Adam? You could just take Lily and run again." Adam looked at his daughter, who was asleep inside. "Because I'm tired of running. And because for the first time in 4 years, someone knocked on my door who made me remember that some things are worth fighting for." He reached out, his rough hand briefly brushing hers. The spark was undeniable, a connection born of trauma and truth. But the moment was interrupted by the vibration of his satellite phone. "It's time," Adam said, his eyes turning back to ice. "The ghost is going to the ball." The Crystal Hall was a cathedral of glass and ego, shimmering under the weight of 10,000 diamonds. Oak Haven's elite moved through the ballroom like sharks in a velvet tank, their conversations a low hum of acquisitions and betrayals. At the center of it all stood Julian Sterling, the coldest millionaire. He was a man who didn't just walk into a room, he colonized it. Julian stood on the dais, checking his watch. The merger announcement was minutes away. He felt invincible.
He had silenced the journalists, bought the regulators, and erased the ghost from the history books. He didn't see the black sedan pull up to the private entrance. He didn't see the man in the charcoal gray suit step out, his presence radiating a chilling authority that made the security detail instinctively step aside. Adam Brooks walked into the ballroom with Marina on his arm. The transformation was total. Marina was a vision in emerald, her father's legacy draped in the fire of the Whitman jewels. But it was Adam who stopped the breath of every veteran investor in the room. He didn't look like a carpenter, he looked like the man who owned the bank that owned the building. The whispers spread like wildfire. Is that Brooks? The ghost? Julian Sterling froze. His glass of champagne trembled as Adam and Marina approached the dais. The coldest millionaire suddenly felt the temperature in the room plummet. Julian, Adam said, his voice a low, terrifyingly calm vibration. You look surprised. Did you think a few suits in an SUV could finish what a plane crash couldn't? You're a dead man walking, Adam, Julian hissed, leaning over the podium. You have no leverage here. I have the signatures. I have the board. You have a house of cards, Adam replied. Marina stepped forward, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was the moment Adam had prepared her for. She looked at the cameras, the journalists, and the predatory eyes of the elite. She knew that Julian's security was seconds away from dragging them out. She needed to do something so shocking, so public, that the cameras couldn't look away. She turned to Adam. In the middle of the ballroom, under the blinding lights and the gaze of 1,000 enemies, Marina reached up and grabbed Adam's lapels. She kissed him. It wasn't a soft, romantic gesture. It was a cold, calculated strike. It was a kiss that claimed the ghost as her own, a public declaration of an alliance that Oakhaven hadn't seen in decades. The room went deathly silent. The sound of camera shutters was the only noise, a mechanical roar capturing the moment the coldest woman in the room kissed the man who could dismantle the city. The shock was a physical force. Julian Sterling staggered back, realizing the narrative had been stolen from him. He wasn't the protagonist anymore, he was a footnote in the return of the king. That kiss just cost you everything, Julian, Adam whispered as Marina pulled back, her eyes flashing with a mix of triumph and something much deeper. Because while everyone was watching us, my servers finished the transfer. Your offshore accounts are frozen. Your secret merger is now a public fraud investigation. The doors of the Crystal Hall burst open. It wasn't Julian's security. It was the Federal Task Force. Adam stood tall, his arm wrapped firmly around Marina's waist. He wasn't the ghost anymore, and he wasn't just a lonely dad. He was a man who had used the coldest kiss in history to burn a kingdom to the ground. But as Julian was led away in handcuffs, screaming about betrayals, Adam felt Marina tremble against him. The war was over, but the reality of what they had just started was only beginning to settle in. The sirens of the federal agents faded into the distance, leaving the Crystal Hall in a state of suspended animation. The elite of Oakhaven stood frozen, their champagne flutes heavy with the realization that the hierarchy had shifted. Julian Sterling, the man who had frozen out everyone in his path, was gone and melted away by the heat of a scandal he couldn't survive. The narrative Adam led Marina out of the hall and through the back entrance where his black sedan waited. The suit felt like a suit of armor he was finally ready to shed. He drove in silence until the city lights were a mere glow in the rearview mirror and the familiar silhouettes of the Douglas firs began to embrace the road. You did it, Marina said, her voice barely a whisper in the quiet car. You dismantled him in 5 minutes. I didn't do it, Marina, Adam said, his eyes fixed on the road. You did. That kiss, it wasn't just a distraction. It was a choice. You chose the ghost over the king, and the world saw it. When they arrived back at the farmhouse, the lights were on. Adam's heart skipped a beat until he saw his neighbor, a trusted grandmotherly figure, waving from the porch.
Lily was asleep inside, blissfully unaware that her father had just reclaimed a throne he never wanted.
The following morning, the world was different.
The news was saturated with the ghost of Wall Street's return, but Adam didn't answer the phone. He spent the morning in his workshop, the smell of cedar finally returning to soothe the scent of high society perfume.
Marina joined him in the workshop, holding 2 mugs of coffee.
She looked at the hidden keypad on the wall, then at the man sanding a piece of pine.
"What happens to the ghost now?" she asked. Adam stopped sanding and looked at her.
"The ghost is officially dead. I've signed over 90% of the assets I recovered to a trust for the city's schools and the recovery of your father's legacy. I kept just enough to make sure Lily never has to worry, and that this house stays exactly as it is." He walked over to her, his hands rough and dusty, the hands of a carpenter, not a millionaire.
"I don't want to be the coldest man in any room, Marina.
I want to be the man who wakes up to make pancakes and watches the sunset from this porch." Marina set the coffee down and stepped into his space, echoing the moment at the gala, but this time, there were no cameras, no billionaires, and no secrets.
"I think the carpenter is far more impressive than the ghost."
A year later, Silver Falls was thriving. The ghost had become a local legend, a man who occasionally funded a new library or a community center anonymously, but mostly, he was just Adam, the best woodworker in the county. Lily was 5 now, running through the yard with a dog she had named Emerald in honor of the woman who had become her mother.
Marina hadn't returned to the city.
She had started the Silver Falls Gazette, a small but fierce investigative paper that operated out of the renovated guest house. The happy ending as the sun dipped below the Oregon horizon, painting the sky in violet and gold. Adam sat on the porch swing. Marina leaned her head on his shoulder, and Lily sat between them, exhausted from a day of fairy hunting in the woods.
Adam looked at the wedding band on his finger, a simple, hand-carved piece of ironwood.
He had opened his door for one night to protect a stranger, and in doing so, he had found the only person who could help him finish building a life. The coldness was gone, replaced by the warmth of a hearth that would never go out.
What an incredible journey from a midnight knock to a life-changing love.
Adam and Marina's story is a reminder that the most powerful thing you can be is yourself, and that a single act of kindness can rewrite your entire history.
If you found a hidden vault in your home, what's the one thing from your past you'd hope to find? Let us know in the comments below.
If you enjoyed this 5-part series of suspense, romance, and the return of the ghost, please support the channel. Like this video, share it with your friends who love a good twist, and subscribe to join our growing family of storytellers. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a tale from the heart.
Thank you for watching, and remember,
the coldest hearts are often just waiting for the right person to bring them home.
See you in the next story.